Racist censorship at Facebook? Really? Next up on Come On Now. We've heard a lot about social media censorship in the news lately. Everything from Donald Trump getting deplatformed to everyday Americans getting deplatformed because they discuss the ins and outs of COVID and everything else that's going on in the world, things that social media is actually for. Well, there was a bill in the Texas legislature this session that would have stopped social media censorship. And here with me to talk about this today is Mano DeAyala, who is chairman of the Hispanic Republicans of Texas. Chairman Ayala, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Bryan. Yeah, this is a bill we did want. We liked it.
What would, so the bill was Senate Bill 12, right? Sponsored or authored by Senator Hughes. Specifically, what would SB 12 have done?
So SB 12 was trying to accomplish what states could do without violating or stepping on the toes of some of the federal protections. And I think the bill did a very good job. Some good work went into it to make sure that it did hold these tech companies accountable for what they, for the most part, allowed or didn't allow on their sites.
So specifically, if you got censored as an individual or a group, you could bring suit against these companies. And I believe this bill empowered the state to act as well, which is kind of unique on this one, right?
Correct. It allows a Texas consumer to bring an action. And again, this action isn't to recover a bunch of money. It's to get the courts to intervene to help manage, these judgment calls that these platforms make. So, and to provide some transparency as well. So again, it's one of those things that wasn't too onerous for the tech companies, but also provided some relief for the consumer.
Now, your group, Hispanic Republicans of Texas, has been around for a while. I know I've been familiar with you for a decade or so, maybe longer.
A little longer.
So you've been around a while. You're an established group. You're well-known, well-respected around the state. Social media censorship actually struck your group. What happened?
So it happened really without us knowing. And then we had an ad that we decided to run, and it was very simple. This was the entirety of it. It was Hispanic Republicans of Texas, the next generation of Texas leaders. That's it. Those were the entirety of the words. Apparently, Facebook said that it violated their discriminatory policies, which we found very odd because we are representative of a minority group. So that we found that to be somewhat odd. So we protested, or I think it's a review process we go through. We went through it once, we went through it twice. Each time they didn't reverse their position. We started making a lot of noise about it. And as that noise, I think, reached Facebook, they changed their mind. So what this bill does is kind of stop that process. There is an avenue, there is a venue that we can go to make sure whether that type of restriction is appropriate or not appropriate, and the court systems would help us do that. So I thought it was a great bill, especially since it happened to us.
Yeah, and I want to just get our thoughts focused on that again for a second. Your group has been around for a long time, and the ad, I didn't hear anything discriminatory in that ad at all. What I heard is a very straightforward ad at a very sort of high level. There's not even any policy really in that ad, right? It's just future leaders.
There are no objective or subjective ways that one could read that ad, listen to that ad, and come away with it's discriminatory in any way, shape, or form. It just is impossible.
Right. So, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mano, but it sounds to me like Facebook discriminated against Hispanic Republicans of Texas because of at least those first two words in the name of your group.
I wish I knew their algorithms and how they worked, but there's no other takeaway other than that takeaway.
Which is that they discriminated against you based on race.
Correct.
Yeah.
Supposedly what they were trying to prevent from happening, they're the ones that actually did it. So, in our case, it was a shock. We hear about it in the news happening to the big boys, what happens to President Trump, what happens to New York Post when they were running their Hunter Biden story. You just never think it's going to happen to you. And that was really an eye opener for us. And the more I talk about it, the more I hear that it happens to a lot of other folks who don't have an alternative platform to expose what happened to them.
Yeah, and they may not have the clout themselves to fight back. You're a
Correct.
fairly sizable group with some serious allies in your firepower in your arsenal. Not everyone has that, so not everyone is capable of fighting back.
Absolutely right, and that's why, again, when this bill came out, when I read it for the first time, Senator Hughes did a lot of work and his group to put together a bill that I thought provided enough relief without trying to do too much. It was really, really a well done bill. I'm also a practicing lawyer, so I look at it with those eyes as well.
Right.
And it's just the fact that this bill didn't pass was disappointing. And the fact that we have to wait 2 years for this bill to pass is also a little disappointing.
Yeah, right. I mean, other states, for instance, Florida, have passed bills that do this. And just briefly, for folks who think, well, this is a private company, they can do what they want, set their own rules. That's not really the case. There are cases out there, for instance, Marsh versus Alabama from 1946, that specifically speak to free speech in public squares that are owned by private companies, right?
Correct. And this is, again, these tech companies, and especially Facebook and Twitter, have become the public square. They started out being for friends to share photos and information and connect, and now they've become the public square. So as time goes by, their role in our society increases more and more. Between now and our next session, I think hopefully we'll see some changes in their behavior. But if not, I hope we can address this bill again then.
Yeah, I mean, as conservatives, we don't like saying there ought to be a law, but really, there ought to be a law, right? And I think you were echoing Justice Brandeis in his majority opinion in Marsh when he said the bigger a company gets to where they own the public square, the more responsibility they have to foster free speech, because First Amendment rights do not end at the property line.
Exactly. This is what they chose to do. This is the platform and the space they sought to acquire. And now they're playing, judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to content. And I think everybody's aware of it. It's how do you address it? And, some folks may want to go way too far. That's why I keep coming back to this bill. Mm-hmm. This bill was the right approach. That's why we liked it so much.
Yeah, it's a good bill. I've read it.
Yeah.
It's one of those bills that's a page, maybe 2 pages. It's not one of these 50,000 page bills that you see run through legislature. Sometimes it's very straightforward. It just says they can't censor, and if they do, here are a couple of possible paths for remedy.
And hopefully it would incentivize them to behave better at the outset. And if it accomplishes that, then we're way ahead of the game in righting some of these wrongs.
Yeah, now that makes perfect sense. Sometimes you want to pass a law just to ward off bad behavior. Not that you necessarily want prosecutions under it. You actually want to stop the bad behavior in the first place.
Right.
Yeah. And in this case, it was really bad behavior because it was racial discrimination against a very responsible, well-known group, your group, Hispanic Republicans of Texas.
I can only, again, you're putting me in their shoes. And I think that the word Republican and Hispanic in their algorithm should never go together. Unfortunately, in this state, those two words are coming together more and more, and we're seeing a lot larger turnouts, and that's an exciting thing for us in our group. We're trying to build on that momentum here in this next cycle. So I think that's concerning to those who I guess would not like to see that happen.
Yeah, and you speak of building toward the next cycle, which is exactly where I wanted to go next. So, Mano, you're also involved in a group called the Hispanic Leadership Alliance. Tell me about that. What are they doing?
Hispanic Leadership Alliance is an organization that focuses a lot on education and educating primarily targeted to Hispanics in Texas. And it's a really neat organization, fun group, been around several years, have done a lot of different projects, but most recently we're working on short video projects, and we're excited about those.
Tell me a little bit about those videos if you can.
Sure. They're called Hola Consejos. Hola meaning hello in Spanish, and HLA being the acronym for Hispanic Leadership Alliance. So Hola Consejos, you can find us on Hola Consejos, CONSEJOS.com. And you'll see a series of short videos on current subject matters, some historical subject matters, topics like energy independence, topics like fiscal responsibility and the role of government in that respect, topics like Texas Hispanics in the military, going back to the 1800s and prior to that. And it's really interesting stuff. And we've had a lot of folks interested in it. And lately, that is this year, 2021, we've become even more active in producing those videos. So,
Mano DeAyala, Chairman of Hispanic Republicans of Texas, thank you for joining me today on Come On Now.
Thank you, Bryan.
Well, there you have it. Facebook censored the Hispanic Republicans of Texas because they're Republicans, and probably more importantly because they are Hispanic. This is unacceptable, and states do need to pass laws to protect their citizens from social media censorship. The law and the precedents in the law are clear on this, that our free speech rights do not end at the property line, whether they're physical property lines or digital property lines. Should social media be able to get away with this? Come on now. I'm Bryan Preston.